When many of us hear the term confidential informants, we often think of mobsters wearing a wire to turn in their bosses.
All right, but in reality, as 60 Minutes investigates, they include young college students that were busted for selling small amounts of drugs. And in some cases, there are tragic consequences. Here's a part of the investigation that aired last night.
2 felonies.
This young man, Andrew Sadek, was caught on tape by another confidential informant making 2 sales for a total of $80. Weber has called Sadek in before charging him to present a choice. Agree to work as a CI, wear a wire, and make undercover drug buys from 3 people twice each, or be charged with 2 Class A felonies.
Potentially, the max is 40 years in prison, $40,000 fine. You understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, you're probably not going to get 40 years, but is it a good possibility that you're going to get some prison time? If you don't help yourself out, yeah, there is. Okay. That's probably not a way to start off your young adult life and your career, right?
Sadek took the deal. Weber told us most students do. Part of the agreement he signed, keep the whole thing strictly to himself.
You can't tell anybody you're working for me, for obvious reasons.
An award-winning student of electrical technology, Andrew Sadek did as he was told. Never told any of his close friends about being an informant, never called a lawyer, and didn't breathe a word to his parents, Tammy and John Sadek.
Why do the Goncalveses champion individuals in this story who could actually be guilty for Kaylee's horrific murder? Another question that you should have is, why do the Goncalves parents need sources to facilitate the goings-on of those living in the city of Moscow? Here, check this out.
He was here. He stayed a couple of days with us.
He helped us find a lot of evidence that helped us understand exactly when the girls...
He knew people, and he identified people in the food truck video. He's like, I know who that is. That's that. That's this.
This is this roommate. This is that roommate.
Mm-hmm.
We really lost our 2 sources of what was going on in that.
He was here. He stayed a couple of days with us.
He helped us find a lot of evidence that helped us understand exactly when the girls...
He knew people, and he identified people in the food truck video. He's like, I know who that is. That's that. That's this.
This is this roommate. This is that roommate.
Mm-hmm.
We really lost our 2 sources of what was going on in that.
The family still waiting on a full digital copy of Kaylee's phone from authorities.
These are the last moments of your child's life, and you're sitting here fighting with somebody who just doesn't care.
They were able to collect some of Kaylee's belongings from the university over the summer, which raised concerns for them about how well possible evidence was processed, including a trash can from Kaylee's room that was full and appeared untouched.
We opened it. It was a little squeezy applesauce thing like you would give to like a toddler.
Yeah.
It did not appear to have been gone through.
There was something that you mentioned, I think a couple of days ago in an interview that sort of stood out to me, and that was that I think you had had a chance to speak with the coroner and got a detail about one of the injuries that your daughter suffered at the hands of this killer. I think it was a punch to the face. Can you tell me what it is that you learned?
I don't go into all the details on it because I want the court to bring it out. I want them to do it. But yes, I feel 2.5 years. The defense has a strategy to have everybody forget. And I'm here to make sure they don't forget. So.
I'll tell. You already told her about noise?
Yep, already told her about noise.
Well, I'm not going to warn you guys for noise because you don't live here.
Yeah.
But I would probably strongly suggest that anyone else that's left here, if they don't live here, y'all should probably leave together.
I'll let them know.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Because if not, I'm going to come back. And I don't think you want to. You don't. I'm not saying you are.
We were just,
they were here.
This.
They went to a party.
This would not be the first party I've ever gone to where the people who live here leave, and just let people stay. Why they do that, I don't know. That to me, that would be stupid. I'm not going to let people stay where I live, and it's responsible. Oh, I know. Trust me. Like I said, I've done this for 22 years, man. I get it.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, we'll go let them know, and then make sure.
And just let them know I'm not going to stand out here and wait for them to come out, try and give them MIPs or anything like that. But in the same term, tell them not to leave with alcohol.
Yeah.
Because that's the first way you're going to get us to contact you.
Yeah.
Don't do stupid shit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard somebody say, don't do stupid shit and the cops won't touch you.
Yep.
Be smart. Don't be stupid. Don't draw attention to yourself. Right?
Yep.
Cool.
All right, well,
Could drugs be involved in all of this?
I have not heard that there's any suspicion that drugs played a role in the killings.
So not like a drug deal gone bad or something like that?
I am not aware of anything like that, no.
The Moscow City Police Department posted this message to their Facebook page on November 30th, 2022. Quote, regarding the interview with Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson, we feel his responses were messaged to support the implication that new information had been released, specifically generalized statements regarding the potential of targeted victims and the involvement of drugs were redefined into an affirmative answer. End quote. An affirmative answer is a response that indicates agreement, confirmation, or says yes to a question. We're trying to figure this out. If Kaylee was truly a confidential informant, since everyone is under the impression that a policeman, exiled due to an early onset of dementia, dribbling something undecipherable within eyeshot of an officer's body cam, for all we know, perhaps Captain Lanier was muttering to himself that he thought he had left the house without turning off the stove. Hell, we thought up until now that Kaylee was being used by her father. But by the sound of things, what if Kaylee was collecting information for her private investigator father, who was trying to build a case against a network of criminal actors in the city of Moscow, including some of the officers working for the city police department? Then would make perfect sense that the thing that was confirmed on November 13th, when Madison Mogen, in a drunken stupor, shared this very secret with some of the members of the Corner Club, which included a chief-looking dude with his thumbs in his pockets. It would explain why Kaylee was tortured much more than the others. It would explain why Stephen Gonsalves remained in Rathdrum, while the other families drove to Moscow. It would explain why Steve would keep the truth under wraps and cooperate with police, while cheering on the crucifixion of the right guy, while half-heartedly forgetting about his daughter. But why would Madison have to have anything to do with any of this? Why would Christy and Steve lie to Maddie's parents?
My phone rings, and it's Maddie's boyfriend, Jake. And my heart kind of stopped for a second. And he said, Karen, do you know what's going on in Moscow right now? And I was like, no, I have no idea. So he said, there's been a homicide at Maddie's house. We think Xana's dead. And my heart just sank. Like, I called Maddie and Kaylee, and there was no answer. So I called the Moscow Police Department, and they were like, well, we can't really tell you anything. And Scott kind of downplayed it. He's like, yeah, no, it's probably something so like blown out of proportion kind of thing.
I go, well, let's just go down and have lunch with her. We'll go pick her up and we'll see what's going on.
We got in the car, we got gas, and we headed down to Moscow.
Her dad called her and her brother said he was being questioned, and so he just wanted to know like more information on it, if you could tell family or anything.
Not at this time. Sorry, guys. I'm back off mic.
Found out my daughter was passed away 5 hours before the officers contacted me.
What did they know? If Steve and Christy found out that Kaylee had passed away 5 hours before the officers told them, then around 12:30, Steve and Christy heard that Kaylee and Madison had been murdered, almost 1/2 of an hour after Bethany called the police. Jack DeCoeur first arrives at approximately 12:09 p.m. So, how did Christy and Steve find out that Kaylee was no longer alive? They also knew about Maddie way before the Vandal alert had gone out. Why didn't they tell the Laramies that Kaylee and Maddie were no longer alive while they were talking to Madison's mother? We are not condemning, but rather we are looking for behavioral motivation and discerning the story that it tells.
And Karen and Scotty, Maddie's mom and dad, they were all the way down there. So we were talking with them, and, you know, are you guys there yet? Da da da. And they were like, no. Have you guys heard anything?
Karen was, she had just seen that there was an unconscious person on the news and at the kids' house. And so she was like, I'm going down to get the girls. And they're not answering their phones. She just figured they were caught up in whatever was going on. That's why they weren't answering. So they just headed down. And when I talked to her, she was 25 minutes out from Moscow. She's like, I'm getting ready to pick up the girls. And I did not have the heart to say, well, I was telling her, we've been told that it's Kaylee and that she was shot.
At 12:30, Steve and Christy Gonsalves already know about Kaylee and Madison. While they're talking with Karen, Madison's mother, they ask her if they're in Moscow yet. Karen answers, no. Have you guys heard anything? Karen had seen that there was an unconscious person at the house on the news, so she was going to go get the girls. Karen and Scott were still 25 minutes away from Moscow. Christy doesn't have the heart to tell her that Maddie's dead also, so she offers up news about Kaylee being shot. When you consider the amount of effort that Steve and Christy put into obtaining information about that which was happening down in Moscow, using different people to do what they could have done on their own, but chose not to for some curious reason, you'd think that they would offer this same favor by telling Karen the truth, especially after being asked if they knew anything. This is how it seems, based on the information that has been offered to the public. Fear keeps Steve and Christy from traveling to Moscow. Guilt keeps them from confiding in Karen that Madison was killed. There is something with greater weight than the tragedy they have suffered with Kaylee. There is something equal to or greater than. Their daughter having been killed is a big deal, but for them, there is something equal to or greater than that.
How could it not be a planned thing? You know, how could it not have been targeted? For all four of them.
Do you know?
I think it's closer than that. I think it's deeper than that. I think I think they have information that they're not giving us, and it's real fishy. That's what I will say.
When you say you think it goes deeper than that, what do you mean?
I mean, I think it was somebody closer than a stalker. And I don't know who. I'm not gonna specify anything like that. I'm just going to say I think that it was somebody, you know, and I think possibly they may have trusted. That's the only thing I can think of, because how could something like this happen so quickly, so quietly, so without any answer, unless it was somebody super close to them. You know what I mean?
Do you think the person who did this had been in that house before?
I think they knew them. I think they may have even been friends with them. I think it had to have been somebody close to them. To have been able to get away with it like this. Without, you know, it just doesn't make sense. None of this makes any sense. It had to have been somebody they trusted that was, you know what I mean? I mean, somebody who knew the house well, somebody who knew them well.
Kara, I cannot tell you how...
So quickly, without a trace on.
The prosecutor side. So you think we're in a good space in Idaho?
You know, as good as we can be.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're doing things the right way. The partnerships, as I was talking about before, between the federal, state, and local
Yeah.
on the drug side are very effective. And, you know, one of the things I'm really proud about is we're innovative.
Yeah.
You know, this is the Department of Justice being innovative, which sounds like an oxymoron, but, you know, we went to the governor and we said, you know, we have these state and local sponsored prosecutors in Boise and in Pocatello. We need one in Coeur d'Alene because that's where we're seeing a lot of fentanyl. And, you know, we figured out a way to do it with some federal funds and matching funds from the state and local buy-in to have essentially a new specialized prosecutor up in Coeur d'Alene.
That's awesome.
To attack the drug problem.
Let's talk about fentanyl. So just a little background.